Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor, months before the attack. And one famous battleship, BB-39 Battleship Arizona. World War II was fought by Americans on two fronts, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean included ships like the USS Wichita. The Pacific Ocean included the ships like the USS Maryland. It took great ships and men on those ships to help win the war in the Atlantic Ocean. Here are some of the pictures of the battleships of the Pacific Ocean before World War II and before Pearl Harbor attack. The next few pictures shows what the battleship Arizona looked like during its long history before Pearl Harbor. Battleships in both World War I and II were the kind of ship sailors wanted to be on. Battleships were big, mighty, and powerful. Battleships were to be feared by the enemy. World War II was fought between the Axis and the Allies. There were many more countries involved, but these were the main ones on both sides. The main leaders were Allied leaders, Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin. United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt. British Empire, Winston Churchill. Axis leaders, Germany, Adolf Hitler. Japan, Emperor Hirohito. Italy, Benito Mussolini. There will be more countries that would enter the war on both sides. In the Pacific Fleet, there will be a number of different kinds of ship that were assigned to them in 1941. 9 battleships, 3 aircraft carriers, 12 heavy cruisers, 8 light cruisers, 50 destroyers, 33 submarines, 100 patrol bombers. The battleships were divided into 2 divisions. Division 1, USS Pennsylvania, USS Arizona, USS Nevada. Division 2 battleships, USS Tennessee, USS California, USS Oklahoma, USS Colorado, USS Maryland, USS West Virginia. Only time would tell what would happen over the next few months for this famous event at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The next picture shows the battleship Missouri post-World War II days. USS Missouri, BB-63, speed 33 knots or 38 miles per hour, 45,000 tons, 387.5 feet long, 28.9 feet wide, crew 1,851 men. The next picture shows the USS Iowa and its firepower ability during a demonstration show post-World War II time. In the Atlantic arena, there will be 2 more famous generals who would rise to the top. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander-in-Chief fighting the Germans. There is also the other famous Army general as well. General George S. Patton, Supreme Commander-in-Chief fighting the Italians. Pacific Ocean Fleet Admiral during World War II was Fleet Admiral Charles W. Nimitz. There were a total of 9 battleships at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Here are what the battleships looked like before the attack on Pearl Harbor. Soon, the battleship would one day be replaced by something else. The aircraft carrier. USS Enterprise. CV-6. The war in both the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean would be challenging to both the battleship and aircraft carriers. Admiral Kimball, months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, had ordered the submarines to Wake Island. The strategy was simple for the Admiral. If the Japanese attacked any American interest in the Pacific, he could call for the submarines to intercept the Japanese forces before they could escape back to Japan. Also missing from Pearl Harbor that day were the aircraft carriers. The first generation of aircraft carriers, flat tops, were made out of wood. Today, the modern aircraft carrier is nuclear. USS Enterprise with the wooden flight deck. The USS Enterprise today is nuclear powered. World War II on both sides would be decided by one thing: great leaders. World War II of itself started between Germany and the British Empire on first September 1939. 29th of December 1940, President FDR gives one of his famous fireside chats over the radio. Americans listened to the President's speech by radio. The President is concerned about the war between England and Germany. Meanwhile, the United States began to step up the war effort for England, patrolling the North Atlantic Ocean. CNO Chief Naval Officer Admiral H.R. Stark. Admiral Stark expresses his concerns about the war between England and Germany. In 1942, a German U-boat torpedoes an Allied supply tanker in the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. Now, Atlantic Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King must act on this attack. The United States of America has now been attacked by the German U-boats that campaigned against the Allies and the Atlantic. The big question for Americans was this: How many more countries will be drawing into this war as well as them? There were great military leaders as well, such as Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, General Douglas MacArthur, The war in the Pacific would test the American resolve to be the leaders of the world. Before Pearl Harbor, the Pacific Fleet headquarters was located at North Island, San Diego, California. Admiral James O. Richardson was in charge of the Pacific Fleet until February 1941. Admiral Richardson objected to President FDR about moving the Pacific Fleet headquarters to Pearl Harbor. Admiral Richardson was quickly transferred out of this command upon executive order. Admiral Richardson was a 5-star admiral until he was transferred to another position, which he then became a 4-star rear admiral. Admiral Richardson would be replaced by another admiral in February 1940, 11 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. Admiral Husband E. Kimmel. Both Admiral Kimmel and another Army officer would soon see the end of their military careers after the disaster of December 7th was well out of the past. Lieutenant General Walter C. Short. But Imperial Japan would not easily give up her power to be recognized as well. In the Pacific, Imperial Japan had her leaders as well. Izuruki Yamamoto, Chuichi Nagumo. Perhaps one of the most valued things great warriors wanted to get were medals. Medals showed how skilled the leader was when it came to be a great warrior. To die in battle without any medals was considered to be a disgrace. So the war in the Pacific Ocean would press on. Many battles would be fought and many lives would be lost. Both the Allies and the Axis would try to outthink and outdo the other in war. Strategy and planning among the leaders were crucial. During World War I, all nations involved found that it became too costly to continue to build ships called Dreadnoughts. A mixture of a battleship and battle cruiser. The next few pictures shows what the Dreadnoughts looked like during World War I. World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars, but in truth, it was only the beginning of a greater war to follow after this one. The pictures of the World War I Dreadnoughts we just saw were getting old and costly. So the Allies came up with a solution. Peace Treaty of Versailles. According to this treaty, all nations who signed it agreed to limit their arms race buildup. But once again, the truth be known, some countries did not take this peace treaty seriously.
There are many statistics in our lives, but they never matter until we become one. My only son became a statistic. Stand up and be counted to end the cycle of violence.
Log on to thepeacealliance.org to find out how you can get involved.
World War II saw much action between the battleship on the water and the planes above the water. Ships being sunk in the Atlantic Ocean by the German U-boats. Quietly after the Kaiser of Germany surrendered to the Allies after World War I, Germany began to rebuild its military power through another leader. Adolf Hitler, Führer of Germany. Yet, before his time, it was the Kaiser who led Germany through World War I. Kaiser Wilhelm II. After World War I, the Germans' pride was devastated when The old dreadnoughts were sunk, and Germany had lost territory to the Allies. Germany's pride was now hurt, looking for a new leader to bring them back as an industrial giant once more. The Kaiser was exiled to doomed Netherlands when Hitler rose to power. From 1920 to 1939, the Germans were quietly rebuilding their new war machine. While in the Far East, Imperial Japan was doing the same thing. Fascist Italy would just simply jump on board with the Axis when the time came. For all the nations known then, the battleship was becoming old and simply too expensive to build as well as maintain. The peace treaty at Versailles would one day eventually be considered useless. The Axis powers were defiantly break the treaty, and the world will soon be at war again. Germans invade Poland. $1.5 million German soldiers would invade Poland. The invasion of Poland was a prelude to something bigger. Russia. But for now, the Poles thought the Germans invaded them peacefully till the German battleships opened fire to the civilian Poles, outrightly murdering many of them without warning. The world and the Allied leaders were shocked. The Allied leaders, being FDR and Winston Churchill, became very concerned as to what this meant. FDR signs his war of declaration on Germany. It appears that treaties were meant to be broken. The Atlantic Ocean would become a war zone between the Germans and Americans with the British. The next few pictures show some of the war in the Atlantic Ocean. It would only be a matter of time before Imperial Japan would attack Pearl Harbor. The question was just a matter of when. World War II was one of knowing how to break the code of messages each country was sending out. Months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, President FDR would come up with an American solution to prevent war with Imperial Japan. Imperial Japan was stalling to attain all the points the president requested to avoid war. Ambassador Joseph grew to Japan in 1941. Ambassador Grew would wait for the 14-point resolution from FDR to deliver to Emperor Hirohito. Ambassador Grew would eventually send a message to British General Montgomery. British General Montgomery was in charge of the British Tank Corps in North Africa. The message was war with Imperial Japan was inevitable. Great leaders throughout the world kept in touch with each other. Here now are some pictures of the world main leaders involved in World War II. Soviet Union leader Joseph Stalin. United States leader President Franklin D. Roosevelt. British Empire, Sir Winston Churchill. Leaders for the Axis were Germany's leader, the Führer of Germany, Adolf Hitler. Imperial Japan's leader, Emperor Hirohito. Italy's fascist leader, Benito Mussolini. The next picture is the U.S. Secretary of State, 1941. United States Secretary of State, Cordell Hull. Ambassador Grew waited patiently for the 14-point declaration from the Secretary of State. But time was running short for both sides. December 7th, 1941 would arrive sooner than anyone would have expected. Imperial Japan was not only practicing their war games in Tokyo, Japan, they were building the world's largest battleship. Battleship Yamato. World's largest battleship in World War II. Soon the Allies would have their hands full fighting a war on 3 fronts. Time was running short on all sides. If Russia fell to the Germans, then democracy of the rest of the world would possibly fall as well. Time was running out.
All right, everyone, can we get it quiet on set? I need track 3 queued and audio ready. Camera 3 on preview and ready to fade. And we're ready to roll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Music in and fade camera 3.
Welcome to the GRTV studio. In this studio, Grand Rapids Community Media Center members have the ability to bring their experiences to life. If you have a hobby, skill, or experience you want to share,
this is the perfect venue for you to showcase your talents and ideas.
Whether it's a talk show,
that's illegal. You have to keep that in mind. You really shouldn't say things like that on television. All right.
A talent show or a sitcom.
potential writers, directors, actors, or just techies. This is the perfect place for you to hone your skills. Here are the next dates for the available classes. For more information, check us out on our website at www.grcmc.org or stop in at 711 Bridge Street for a personal tour of the facility. Hope to see you there.
Fade to black and music out. All right, that's a wrap, everybody.
Battle for the Atlantic would last 5 years, 8 months, 5 days. The first ship to be sunk by the German U-boats was the RMS Athenia. The German U-boats would also attack helpless merchant marine ships as well. German Admiral Karl Donitz commanded the German U-boats during World War II. "98 civilians were killed and 19 crew members lost on the RMS Athenia. Now, the German war machine had violated both the Hague Conventions and the London Navy Treaty 1930, which essentially said no civilian or unarmed merchant ships would be attacked. But for both the Nazi Germans and Imperial Japanese, these treaties were meant to be broken. But time once again was ticking away for Pearl Harbor. Imperial Japanese military was trying to create so many messages for the Americans to decode that it would be confusing to what was fact and what was deception. The big question was this for the Allies. If the Imperial Japanese were going to attack, where would they attack? The Imperial Japanese were trying to make it look like they would attack the Aleutian Islands, Alaska. And or the Philippine Islands. President FDR tries to get the 14th part of his message to Emperor Hirohito, but time for peace on earth, goodwill towards man was nowhere in sight. Secretary of State Cordell Hull, with ambassadors Nomura and Kurusu, would find out the next day that America was at war with Imperial Japan. Secretary of State Cordell Hull and ambassadors Nomura and Kurusu. Ambassador Gru in Japan would not be able to get the message to the Emperor in time. The Prime Minister Toho to Imperial Japan. Prime Minister Toho gives the Admiral the go-ahead to attack Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Imperial Japanese confined passports to Hawaii. Imperial Japanese aircraft carrier Takeigai, 1927 to 1942. Pearl Harbor would forever be changed. The next picture shows the map of Battleship Row. The next map shows the plan of attack. Even though the Imperial Japanese thought they had gained victory over their enemies, the victory would be short-lived because they would awake a sleeping giant.
Exhilarating exercise, competitive excitement, rewarding experiences. Put every member of your family on the fast track with Michigan BMX. Admission's free and equipment affordable. Get the gang together for a fun, wild ride. Get the jump now on a track near you at mibmx.com.
Torah. 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 Captain Mitsuo Fuchita, commander of airstrike on Pearl Harbor. For those on Pearl Harbor, that morning would forever change their lives. December 7, 1941, diplomatic relations between Imperial Japan and the United States cease to exist. The air attacks continue on. the first wave of attack on Pearl Harbor. The plan of attack. Army radar technicians pick up leaps on the new radar site. Sir, something is approaching Pearl fast. It's just the B-17s flying from the West Coast, Private. The radar technicians mistake this for B-17 planes coming back from the West Coast mainland. Still, no alarms are sounded as the American flag is beginning to rise for morning colors. Hickam Airfield is attacked first. Then, Ford Island. The Americans have been caught napping. Battle stations. Battle stations. Battle stations. Admiral Husband E. Kimmel finally sounds the alarm at Pearl Harbor. This is not a drill. From 0740 to almost 10 that morning, the attack kept coming on with the Imperial Japanese Navy. But the Americans still fight back. Three brave American pilots are able to get up into the air and shoot many Japanese planes out of the sky. But the damage is done. America is now at war with Imperial Japan. Imperial Japanese Army invades the Philippines, kicking the Americans out. Imperial Japanese Army occupies the Philippines, kicking General MacArthur and the U.S. Army off the island. I shall return. The Imperial Japanese Army invades the Aleutian Islands in June 1942. Attack on Dutch Harbor, Aleutian Islands. Secretary of Navy Frank Knox informs the President, Mr. President, we have been attacked at Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. Total casualties on December 7, 1941. 2,335 servicemen, 68 civilians, 1,178 wounded. 8 battleships destroyed, 2 are sunk, 3 light cruisers, 3 destroyers, 188 aircraft lost. America is shocked. December 8, 1941, President FDR declares war on Imperial Japan before U.S. Congress. A date that will live in infamy. The aftermath of the attack left America mourning for their loss. Battleship Arizona sunk. Battleship Nevada beached. USS Raleigh attacked by airstrike. Destroyer Shaw is sunk. 3 days later, after FDR's famous speech, December 11th, 1941, Germany and Italy declares war on the United States of America. The world is at war now. Pawn countries on the American side were added. Philippine Islands from 1941 to 1945, Mongolia 1941 to 1945. For the Axis, these countries would join their calls. Finland, Thailand, Iraq, Manchuria, Croatia, Slovakia. Only time would play out who would eventually win this war.
There are many statistics in our lives, but they never matter until we become one. My only son became a statistic. Stand up and be counted to end the cycle of violence.
Log on to thepeacealliance.org to find.
The next 4 years would literally tear the world apart. The Allies had to work together. The U.S. Armed Forces as well realized that they too had to work together and share information to win the war. That meant the Army, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard had to work together to win the war. The Allies in the Atlantic came up with one solution to defeat those dreadful German U-boats. The convoy. The German U-boats would try to work together to defeat the Allies in the Atlantic. German U-boats together were called wolf packs. In the Atlantic Ocean, these U-boats would attack anything and everything in their sight. Allied leaders at last gave their forces the go-ahead and declared open warfare and fair game with the enemy. Besides creating a convoy protection the Allies needed to get supplies across the ocean to England, the Allies came up with two more inventions to fight the German U-boats. Sonar. And the other great invention for the Allies was the depth charges. It would only be a matter of time before the war would turn in favor of the Allies in the Atlantic Ocean. But in the meantime, back at Pearl Harbor, both Admiral Kimmel and General Short would be relieved of their command. Admiral Nimitz speaks to his fellow officers at Pearl Harbor and tries to rebuild a positive fighting morale. Men, I'm here to tell you that we are going to win this blasted war. While the Allies in the Atlantic Ocean had to deal with the German U-boats, the Allies in the Pacific had to deal with a new kind of warfare tactic Imperial Japan came up with. Kamikaze pilots. These pilots would literally sacrifice their own lives for their emperor to try and win the war for Imperial Japan. The Allies came up with a solution for this problem: anti-aircraft guns. Now the Allies on both sides of the oceans were beginning to win the war. The kamikaze pilots were losing the war in the skies. And the Battle of the Pacific Ocean Arena, there will be famous battles like the Battle of Coral Sea. The Battle of Midway. The Battle of Guadalcanal. The Battle of Okinawa. One could say that the Battle of the Pacific was a war for the islands. The next picture shows a map of Imperial Japan's main objective in controlling the Asian world. However, with the developments of what the Allies came up with to fight back the enemy, the Imperial Japanese were losing the battle. Here are some more war scenes from World War II. Fire Torpedo 1. Torpedo 1, fired, sir. Direct hit, ensign. Hit me down. All hands. Dive. 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 Before World War II would end, President FDR would die in office. And a new leader would rise to help America win the war once and for all. President Harry S. Truman, 33rd President.
Exhilarating exercise, competitive excitement, rewarding experiences. Put every member of your family on the fast track with Michigan BMX. Admission's free and equipment affordable. Get the gang together for a fun, wild ride. Get the jump now on a track near you at mibmx.com.
After President Truman took the oath of office, The war on both fronts was slowly beginning to draw to a positive conclusion for the Allies. The Bismarck and the HMS Hood would fight it out on the Atlantic with each other. Two more British ships would become involved with the chasing of the Bismarck. The HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse. But the Germans would put up a strong fight, like the Imperial Japanese in the Far East would do as well. The German U-boats were keeping the Americans busy trying to find them and destroy them. Another German U-boat. One of the first U.S. Navy ships to be sunk in the Atlantic Ocean was the popular USS Reuben James. The sinking of the Reuben James happened almost a month before Pearl Harbor. One could suggest that this is when World War II actually began for the Americans. But the war in the Atlantic continued between the Germans and the British. The British sent out her three renowned ships. HMS Hood. HMS Prince of Wales. HMS Repulse. FDR meets with Churchill on Prince of Wales on the Atlantic Ocean near Newfoundland. On 24th of May 1941, HMS Hood meets the German battleship Bismarck on the Straits of Denmark. HMS Hood returns fire upon the Bismarck. As the Bismarck kept firing upon the Hood, the Hood is hit with gunfire by the Bismarck and sinks within 3 minutes. Some 1,100 sailors are lost at sea. The Prince of Wales is also hit and badly damaged. The German battleship is damaged and heads back to port for much needed repairs as well. It would only be a matter of time before the German battleship would be caught by the British Navy. With the big guns aimed for the Bismarck, it would only be a matter of time before the German battleship would meet its last battle. The turnaround happened for the Allies when the Germans began to invade Russia just before winter struck. The Führer, Adolf Hitler, refused to listen to his generals who had suggested to wait till spring to invade Russia. The German army was simply not prepared for a Russian winter. With a lack of warm clothing and protection from the bitter cold, the German army was already defeated. The next defeat for the Axis came when General MacArthur and his army reinvaded the Philippines and liberated the island. I have returned. General MacArthur returns to the Philippines on September 2nd, 1945. The next turnaround for the Allies was when the Germans freeze to death in Russia. Hitler's own soldiers were beginning to be unhappy with their leader. The Russians were able to hang in there to start their campaign to Berlin. But the big break came when the British made their last engagement with the Bismarck. May 1941, somewhere in the North Atlantic Ocean, HMS Rodney fires upon the Bismarck. Bismarck returns fire upon HMS Rodney. HMS Dorsetshire launches torpedo at the Bismarck. The Bismarck takes a hit. The Bismarck begins to sink. HMS Dorsetshire picks up the survivors from the Bismarck. Now, Nazi Germany slowly begins to lose the war. World War II once again is won by the Allies because of great leaders. Beginning with the fall of fascist Italy, the Germans and Italians fall first in North Africa. Nazi General Rommel is defeated in North Africa. The Axis retreat back to Italy. Invasion on the island of Sicily begins by the Allied forces. Operation Rescue. Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery and General George S. Patton meet on the island of Sicily. Next, the Allies invade Italy and defeat the Axis here. Italy's fascists would fall on June 1944. Mussolini is hung by his own people on 27 April 1945. Now General Eisenhower begins many things that will lead to the end of World War II. D-Day, June 6, 1944. As the Allied forces move in to capture Germany's capital, Berlin, the Germans surrender to the American forces. Meanwhile, back in the Pacific arena, the Americans and Canadians recapture the Aleutian Islands. Next, the Allies attack and sink the world's largest battleship. The Yamato. Attacked and sunk in the East China Sea, the Arizona is now avenged. April 7th, 1945. World War II is almost over now for the Allies, whose victory will make them the new leaders in the free world. President Harry S. Truman orders the dropping of the atomic bomb on both Hiroshima, Japan, and Nagasaki, Japan. Japan surrenders on board the USS Battleship Missouri under the direction of General Douglas MacArthur. Japan surrenders 2nd September 1945. The big victory came in 1945 for the Allies when Fall of Berlin, 3rd of July, 1945. Field Marshal Kitto signs the surrender orders to the Americans. Now, because the Allies had worked together, the world is once more free to live in democracy. Every day across America, millions of Americans fight one thing. This menacing act is called road rage. Many things can cause this unhappy situation when one is driving. So please, hang it up and drive. Everyone will be a lot happier upon their determined destinations. Road hog. Think before you drink. Drunk driving can cause road rage. Driving too fast can cause road rage as well. The police enforce the speed laws. Please stop for the red lights. Please help prevent road rage today so they won't end up like this tomorrow. Remember, only you can stop road rage.
What do you mean? I have road rage.
Coast Guard today. Michigan's Coast Guard today is a life-saving business. With hundreds of miles of lakeshore in Michigan, Michigan's Coast Guard members are vigilant, keeping a watchful eye out for emergencies that might happen. For when the boat starts to sink, the Coast Guard swings into action. Rescued. Michigan's Coast Guard is much more as well. Whether practicing an ice rescue mission or ice cutting on the Great Lakes, or flying someone to the hospital. Michigan's Coast Guard is always ready, watching out for you. More pictures of a battleship on the Atlantic Ocean during World War II. In the Pacific arena, it was Admiral Nimitz who helped defeat Imperial Japan. In the Atlantic Ocean arena, it would be General Eisenhower to win the war there. It would be the times and scenes of the following events that would forever be a part of World War II history. 1941. 1943. Nineteen 1944. 1945. 'Never forget those who gave their lives at